Sometimes history forgets the names that really mattered, the ones who never made it home, but made the world a better place because they tried. This isn't just another war story. Nah, this one's about men, real soldiers, the kind of guys who stood their ground when everything around them was falling apart. Some of them were just kids, barely old enough to shave, but brave enough to face the impossible. They left their homes, their families, their dreams, and stepped into hell just so someone else could live in peace. We're talking about 10 American heroes, each one with a story that deserves to be told. Some fought to the very last breath, some were lost and never found, but all of them carried something bigger than fear. So yeah, stick around, because by the end of this video, you're gonna see what real courage looks like. Not in the medals, not in the headlines, but in the hearts of men who gave everything. This is their story. This is for them. Name Leonard C. Brostrom. Born in the small, peaceful town of Preston, Idaho in 1919. A quiet boy, not the kind to start fights, not the kind to stand in the spotlight. Folks in town said he had that calm in his eyes, like nothing could shake him. Leonard grew up on his family's farm, wide fields, tall wheat, cold mornings that smelled like soil and wind. He'd wake up before sunrise to help his father feed the cattle, a breakfast, then walk miles to school with a lunch his mom packed in wax paper. He wasn't a big talker, but he was kind, always helping the neighbors fix a fence or carrying groceries for old Mrs. Jenkins down the road. He loved music too. Used to play an old harmonica on the porch when the day was done. Sometimes people'd walk by and say, "That Brostrom boy, he's got an old soul." When the war started in Europe, America wasn't in it yet, but Leonard felt it coming. He'd read the papers, hear the stories about cities burning, families running for their lives. And though he was gentle by nature, he had that fire inside, the kind that burns quiet but deep. He told his dad one night, "If it comes to us, I'll go. Somebody's got to stand up." And sure enough, after Pearl Harbor, he did. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, the 7th Infantry Division. His mom cried. His dad shook his hand like he was already proud beyond words. Basic training was hell, but Leonard didn't complain. He wrote letters home instead. Always the same tone. Calm, hopeful, steady. "Don't worry," he wrote once. "It's not as bad as it looks on the news. I'm learning fast, and the guys here are good men." By 1944, he was thousands of miles from Idaho, in the steaming jungles of the Philippines, fighting an enemy that didn't quit. The heat was suffocating. The bugs were everywhere, and death was close every damn day. October 28th, 1944, the day everything changed. Leonard's unit was trying to advance on a hill near Leyte Island. Japanese machine guns were dug in deep, bullets ripping through the trees, grenades exploding like thunder. His men were pinned down, couldn't move an inch. Leonard looked around, saw fear in their faces, and that's when something in him just shifted. He stood up, didn't say a word, just grabbed his rifle, slung a few grenades over his shoulder, and started moving uphill, straight toward the gunfire. Bullets sliced through his uniform, dirt kicked up around his boots, but he kept going. He tossed his first grenade. Boom! One nest down, moved to the next. Got hit in the shoulder, didn't stop. Blood everywhere, but he just kept moving, throwing, shooting, crawling when he had to. His squad watched in disbelief, one man taking on what felt like an army. He reached the last machine gun bunker, pulled the pin on his final grenade, stumbled forward this right, and silence followed. When the smoke cleared, the hill was theirs. But Leonard was gone. They found him lying there, his body torn, rifle empty, eyes open toward the sky. He was 25 years old. The U.S. Army later awarded him the Medal of Honor, the highest award for bravery. But medals, they can't capture the heart of a man like Leonard. He wasn't looking for glory. He just wanted to protect his brothers and go home when it was all over. He didn't make it home, but because of him, dozens of others did. That's the kind of man Leonard was. Soft-spoken, steady, brave when it mattered most. And even now, somewhere in the quiet hills of Idaho, when the wind blows through the fields at dusk, it's like you can still hear his whisper, "I did what I had to do." Back home in Preston, Idaho, life moved slow. You could hear the wind whistle through the fields, see the mountains standing quiet and proud, just like they always had. But when Leonard left, something in that town changed. Folks said the mornings felt heavier, like the sun had to work a little harder to rise. His mama, Anna, kept a candle in the window every night. She said it was for him, so he'd find his way back home, no matter where he was. Every week, a letter came in, that careful handwriting of his, always starting with, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay." He'd write about little things, the food, the weather, how he missed the smell of home. "The boys here are tough," he wrote once, "but I think about Idaho every night before I sleep. I can almost hear the crickets out back." There was never any fear in his words, just calm, just Leonard. And then, one week, The letters stopped. The Brostroms didn't know why. Not at first. They figured maybe the mail got delayed, maybe he was moving with the unit. But deep down, his mother felt it. The telegram came 3 weeks later. "We regret to inform you." The words blurred through her tears. The paper slipped from her hands. Neighbors heard her cry that day, a sound no one in Preston ever forgot. His father stood on the porch that night, looking out at the stars, hat in hand, whispering a prayer only God could hear. And for a long time, nobody in that house spoke much. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that holds both pride and heartbreak. Months later, the army sent Leonard's things back. A folded flag, his dog tags, and a harmonica. His mom held it for a long time, then said softly, "He used to play this at sunset." She put it by the window, next to the candle. Every night, when the wind blew just right, she swore she could still hear it. Faint music in the dark. When the news spread through town that Leonard was gone, the church bell rang for a whole minute straight. Men took off their hats. Women wept. Kids stopped playing in the street, because Leonard wasn't just another name on a list. He was one of theirs. The boy who helped fix fences, who carried feed to the barn, who smiled more with his eyes than his mouth. The boy who went off to war and never came home. Years later, they built a small memorial near the town square, a stone plaque with 10 names from Preston who died in WW2. At the very top, Pavnitiner Leonard C. Brostrom, Medal of Honor. People still visit that plaque. They bring flowers, flags, little notes. One kid once left a harmonica there, and somebody swore they heard a faint tune on the breeze that night. Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe it's Leonard saying, "It's all right now." Heroes like him, they don't fade. They live in the stories, in the fields they grew up in the hearts that still whisper their names when the night gets quiet. Leonard Brostrom didn't die for glory. He died because love, real love, doesn't hide when the world's on fire. Out there in the Philippines, after Leonard fell, the jungle went quiet. The men of his unit, the 7th Infantry, they just stood there for a moment, staring at the smoke rising from the ridge. Nobody said a word. You don't really talk after watching a man do what Leonard did. Sergeant Miller, tough as nails, was the first to move. He crawled up the hill, still expecting enemy fire, but there wasn't any left. Just silence. And Leonard, his hands still clenched around his rifle, his body half covered in dirt and leaves. Miller knelt beside him and whispered, "You did it, kid. You actually did it." They carried him down the hill wrapped in his jacket. No flag, no ceremony. Not yet. Just brothers taking care of their own. That night, nobody slept. Some men cried quietly in their foxholes. Others sat staring at the fire, lost in thoughts they'd never speak out loud. The captain came by and said, "We'll move out at dawn. We've got ground to hold for Brostrom." And they did. Every man in that unit fought harder after that day. Like they owed him something. Like his courage had lit a fire in their souls that bullets couldn't touch. They said his name before every mission, for Leonard. And each time they charged forward, it was like he was still with them. That calm, quiet kid from Idaho, leading the way without a word. Weeks later, when the campaign finally ended, a mail ship brought letters from home. One was from Leonard's mother. It had been sent before he died. It read, "Stay safe, my boy. We're so proud of you. The fields are green again, and the neighbors all ask about you." The men passed that letter around the campfire, and no one could finish it without their voice breaking. They folded it up carefully, tucked it into Leonard's helmet, and buried it with him. Months later, when the war ended, many of those soldiers went home, but they carried Leonard's memory with them forever. They'd talk about him sometimes at reunions or in letters. "He was the bravest man I ever met. He made us believe we could survive this damn war." One of them, Corporal Jenkins, said, "When I was scared, I'd think, what would Brostrom do? And somehow I'd find the guts to keep going." Years later, when the Medal of Honor was announced, the surviving men of his unit gathered at a small ceremony. The officer read his citation, every line heavy with truth. He advanced under heavy fire, destroyed enemy positions, and continued despite multiple wounds until he fell mortally wounded. Then the room went silent. No applause, no music, just quiet tears and memories that words couldn't reach. One soldier placed his old dog tag beside the medal display. Another said softly, he never wanted a medal. He just wanted us to make it home. And that's exactly what they did. Because of Leonard. Because a single farm boy from Idaho chose to stand up when no one else could. In every battle since, in every soldier's heart that's faced fear and didn't back down, a part of Leonard C. Brostrom still lives. Quiet, brave, eternal. Time passed. The war ended. Soldiers came home. Parades rolled down main streets across America. But in Preston, Idaho, the Brostrom house stayed quiet. Anna Brostrom still kept that candle burning in the window. Not because she expected him to come back anymore, but because she couldn't stand to blow it out. "It's his light," she used to say. He earned it. Every now and then, the mailman would stop by, hand her a letter from someone she didn't know. Men who'd fought beside Leonard, or boys who'd heard his story and wanted to say thank you. One letter read, Ma'am, your son saved my life on Lady. I never got to tell him, but I want you to know I named my first son Leonard. She cried when she read it, not out of sadness, but pride. The local high school put his photo up in the hallway, young, smiling, in uniform. Every year, the principal would tell the new students, "That's Leonard Brostrom. He walked these same halls. He sat where you sit now, and when his country called, he answered." Kids used to stare at the picture, not really understanding what it meant at first. But as they grew older, they'd start to get it. That freedom, that easy life they had, was paid for by people like him. The city eventually named a park after him, Brostrom Park. On quiet mornings, you could see old veterans sitting on the benches there, talking softly, sometimes telling stories about that Idaho kid who charged a hill alone and never came back. They said it didn't matter if you were from Idaho or New York or Texas. Leonard's story belonged to every soldier who ever had to face the impossible. One journalist who wrote about him put it best: he wasn't loud, he wasn't larger than life, he was simply good. The kind of good that stands its ground when evil tries to take the world. Years later, when his Medal of Honor was displayed in a museum, visitors stopped in front of it longer than most exhibits. Kids would read the description out loud: Private First Class Leonard C. Brostrom, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty. And then they'd stare at his photo. That soft smile, the steady eyes, and whisper, "He looks so young." His story kept spreading. Teachers used it in classrooms, soldiers mentioned him in speeches, and even filmmakers used his name when talking about real courage. But for those who knew him, the neighbors, the old folks, his friends from church, Leonard wasn't just a legend. He was still Lenny, the boy who fixed fences, helped the widowed lady next door, and always made time to say thank you. That's the thing about heroes like him. The world calls them warriors. But the people who knew them remember something else: the kindness, the laughter, the heart. Sometimes late at night, when the wind moves through the wheat fields outside Preston, you can almost imagine him there. That quiet smile, that steady calm. Not a ghost, not a memory, but a promise. A promise that courage doesn't die. That good men, even when they fall, leave something behind that keeps the rest of us standing. Leonard C. Brostrom. He wasn't the loudest, he wasn't the biggest, but when the world turned dark, he was the light that refused to go out. The rain fell soft that morning, like the sky itself was trying to remember him. Out there, somewhere in the Pacific, a hill still bears his blood, a jungle still whispers his name. You can almost hear it when the wind moves through the trees. Brostrom, Brostrom. Some men die once, but heroes like Leonard, they live every time someone remembers him. His grave lies quiet now, marked with white stone and a single flag. But the ground around it, it feels different. Like it knows the story of the kid who never ran, who didn't flinch when the world exploded around him. They say courage is loud, but Leonard's courage was quiet. It was the kind that says nothing, yet speaks to every soul that passes by. In some small town in Idaho, there's a mother who once whispered to a folded flag, "I'm proud of you, son." And somewhere, deep inside the hearts of soldiers standing in formation today, they carry him. They carry the spirit of a man who looked death in the eye and chose to protect his brothers instead. You see, Leonard didn't die for medals. He didn't die for headlines or glory. He died so that one more soldier could go home, so that one more mother could open her door and see her boy step inside again. And that's the kind of hero that time can't erase. When you walk through a war memorial and you see those names carved in stone, remember that one of them once laughed, once dreamed, once wrote letters home. Leonard's story is a reminder. It's not about how long you live, it's about what you stand for while you're here. He stood for courage. He stood for brotherhood. He stood for a country that believed some things are still worth dying for. And maybe, just maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll hear that whisper again. Not gone, just remembered. Private First Class Leonard C. Brostrom, soldier, son, brother, a man who walked into the fire and never came back. But because of him, the world kept turning, and that's what makes a hero. Second superhero name, Nathan Baskind. But to his friends back in Pittsburgh, he was just Nate, the kind of guy who'd help you carry your groceries or stay late after work just to make sure the job got done right. Born in 1916, in a small brick house not far from Murray Avenue, a quiet neighborhood full of corner stores, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery run by old immigrants who spoke broken English but smiled with pride. Nate's parents, Abe and Lena Baskind, were Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe. They came to America with nothing but a few coins and a dream: to build a life free from fear. They worked long hours running their small business, while Nate grew up learning what it meant to work hard and stand tall. People in Squirrel Hill knew the Baskind family. They weren't rich, but they were good people, the kind who'd invite the lonely neighbor for dinner on a cold night. Nate was the only son. Smart, polite, never the loudest in the room, but always the one who listened. He loved books, baseball, and sitting by the window on winter nights, watching the snow fall while the city lights danced across the glass. His mother said he had an old soul. Sometimes she'd find him standing by the door, staring outside, and she'd ask, "What are you thinking about, Nate?" He'd smile softly and say, "Just the world, Ma, just the world." He finished school, then went to work helping his father manage the family business. The Great Depression had been tough on everyone, but the Baskinds survived. Nate learned responsibility early. He wasn't a man who chased money. He chased meaning. In 1941, when war started spreading across the world, he followed every headline. Poland, France, Pearl Harbor. Each story made his jaw tighten a little more. And when America finally joined the fight, he didn't wait. He looked at his father one night over dinner and said quietly, "I think it's my turn, Pa." His father's hand froze on the table. "You don't have to, Nate," he said softly. "We've already lost too many boys." Nate just smiled. That same quiet smile he always had. "I know, Pa, but somebody's got to go, and I can't just sit here while others fight for the world we live in." His mother cried that night. His father didn't. He just stood at the doorway as Nate left, hand raised, eyes full of pride and fear. A few weeks later, Nate Baskind was standing in line at the draft office, holding his papers, wearing that same calm expression. He didn't look like a soldier yet, just a man with quiet courage, the kind that doesn't shout, it endures. They gave him a uniform, and suddenly the mirror didn't show the shopkeeper's son anymore. It showed a soldier. The U.S. Army took him to basic training, where the smell of sweat, oil, and gunpowder mixed with the sound of boots slamming against dirt. Day after day, they pushed him. Harder, faster, further. He wasn't the biggest guy in his platoon, but he was the one who never quit. When others dropped in exhaustion, Nate helped them up. When someone messed up, he didn't yell. He showed them how to fix it. That's how leaders are born, not through noise, but through example. The officers saw it in him, that calm kind of strength. They made him a first lieutenant in the 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion. His job? To lead 4 M10 tank destroyers, heavy metal beasts armed to kill German armor. He wrote one letter home before deployment. "Ma, Pa, don't worry. I'll be careful. I've got good men with me. Tell everyone I'll do my part, and when this is over, I'll bring stories instead of medals." That letter never made it back to him. When they sailed for Europe, the oceans stretched endless and dark. The soldiers on deck talked, laughed, tried to pretend they weren't scared. Nate stood apart sometimes, looking out at the waves, silent, thinking. He didn't know it then, but the same sea that carried him to battle would one day carry his name back home. In the early morning hours of June 6, 1944, they hit the shores of Utah Beach. D-Day. The day the world turned on its axis. Bullets tore through the surf. Explosions ripped open the sand. Screams, smoke, chaos. Nate's tank destroyers rolled forward, engines roaring, shells flying. He kept his head low, shouting orders, pulling wounded men behind cover. He didn't think of himself. He thought of his men. That was who he was. In the days after, they pushed inland. Hedgerows, villages, endless fire. But Nate never lost focus. "Keep moving," he'd tell them. "We're not done till we see daylight." The men trusted him completely. They said he had a way of making you believe you'd survive, even when the whole world said otherwise. June 23, 1944, Cherbourg, France. The air smelled of metal and fear. The thunder of distant artillery rolled through the valleys like angry gods. Nate Baskind had been awake for nearly 2 days straight, leading patrols, giving orders, keeping his men alive. The fighting around Cherbourg was brutal. The Germans weren't giving up that port easily. The 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion was moving forward, inch by inch, every hedgerow hiding something. A sniper, a mine, a machine gun nest. That morning, Nate climbed onto his vehicle, scanning the road ahead through a pair of binoculars. He had this gut feeling, that strange silence before hell breaks loose. "We'll check that crossroad," he said to his driver. "See what's waiting for us." His men didn't argue. They trusted him, even when the air itself felt wrong. They moved down a narrow French lane, hedges high on both sides. Birds had stopped singing, and then it happened. Tat, 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 tat! German machine gun fire ripped through the air, tearing into the road, the steel, the flesh. Nate shouted, "Take cover!" But the gunfire was everywhere. A burst struck the front of the vehicle. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. The driver, Private Robert Lang, felt the impact in his bones. He turned to see Nate hit, blood spreading across his uniform. "Lieutenant!" he yelled. But Nate was still trying to lift his weapon, still trying to return fire, still trying to lead. Another burst. Then silence. Lang was dazed, bleeding. He crawled out, ran through the ditches, bullets chasing him all the way back to friendly lines. When he got there, gasping, shaking, the first thing he said was, "Lieutenant Baskind, he didn't make it. He was hit bad." They tried to send a recovery team, but the crossroads was deep in enemy territory. Too dangerous. For days, they thought Nate was dead. But the truth was even sadder. German records later showed he was found alive, barely breathing. They captured him, carried him to a Luftwaffe field hospital near Cherbourg. The doctors there treated him, not out of mercy, but because they wanted information. But Nate didn't talk. He never gave them a word. His condition worsened that night. The nurse on duty, years later, her notes were found, wrote simply, "American officer, young, quiet, severe wounds, died at dawn. He was buried quickly, in a mixed grave beside fallen Germans. No ceremony, no prayers, just a name written in fading ink on a wooden cross that the rain soon washed away." Back home in Pittsburgh, his family received a telegram. "The Secretary of War regrets to inform you that your son, First Lieutenant Nathan B. Baskind, has been reported missing in action." His mother dropped the letter. His father just sat down and didn't speak for hours. "Missing," they said. But in their hearts, they already knew. For decades, the world kept moving. The war ended, flags waved, fireworks lit the skies, and people tried to forget the screams that once echoed through Europe. But in a quiet home in Pittsburgh, the Baskind family never stopped waiting. Every year on June 23rd, his mother would light a candle by the window, the same window he used to stare out of when he was a boy. "Maybe," she'd whisper, "maybe they'll find him this year." But years turned into decades. The telegram never changed. The file stayed the same, missing in action. His father passed away first, then his mother, still keeping that candle on the sill. The house grew quiet. The city changed, new generations came and went, and the name Nathan Baskind became just another line on a wall, carved among thousands of missing soldiers. But the thing about history is, it doesn't forget the ones who deserve to be remembered. In 2021, a group called Operation Benjamin began digging through old records. Their mission, to identify Jewish soldiers who were buried under the wrong symbols or lost to time. One researcher stumbled upon an unusual clue, a set of German burial records mentioning an unknown American officer found near Cherbourg, died June 23, 1944, buried beside Luftwaffe soldiers. The name wasn't written clearly, but the date, the rank, the place, they matched one man, Nathan B. Baskind. They requested to exhume the grave. DNA tests followed. Weeks turned into months. And then one day, an email arrived in Pittsburgh to a distant relative of the Baskind family. It said simply, "We found him." After almost 80 years, Nate was no longer missing. The remains were identified, confirmed by DNA and historical cross-checks. For the first time since 1944, his name could finally come home. And so on June 23, 2024, exactly 80 years to the day he died, the U.S. Army brought him back to rest properly. The ceremony took place at the Normandy American Cemetery in France, overlooking the beaches he had once fought on. Soldiers stood at attention, flags folded with care. Rabbis prayed in Hebrew under the open sky. The Star of David marked his grave, shining white against green grass and gray stone. The rabbi said, "He is no longer lost. He has come home." For a moment, even the sea went quiet. It was like the whole world paused to welcome back one of its forgotten sons. They say heroes die twice. Once when the bullet finds them, and again when their name is spoken for the last time. But Nathan Baskind, he refused to die that second death, because somewhere between the pages of history and the hearts of those who still remember, his name keeps echoing. He wasn't the loudest man. He wasn't the strongest. He was a quiet kid from Pittsburgh who just wanted to do what was right. He left home carrying a small photograph of his parents and a promise to come back. He never did, but he came back in another way, through the courage he left behind. Nathan fought not for glory, not for medals, but for something simple, for a world that could be free. When his story was rediscovered, people cried, not because he died, but because he was found. It reminded the world that no sacrifice truly disappears, and that even after 80 years, a single name can still move mountains. Maybe that's what being a hero really means. Not the fight, not the victory, but the memory that refuses to fade. So when you walk by that white cross or that Star of David in Normandy and the sea wind brushes your face, remember, one of those names once laughed, once dreamed, once loved, and among them, one was Nathan Baskind, the boy who went missing in war, but was never really gone. He is home now. You've just heard their stories. Leonard Brostrom, Nathan Baskind, two guys who gave everything they had for people they'd never even meet. They didn't fight for fame. They didn't fight for medals. They fought for you, for me, for every single person who wanted to live free. And maybe that's the kind of courage we all need to remember. Not the kind that shows off, but the kind that stands tall when no one's watching. So if you made it this far, thank you. not just for watching, but for listening, for keeping their names alive. And here's the truth, man. Freedom ain't cheap. It's built on sacrifice, on moments of fear, on lives that never got to come home. So live your life in a way that honors them. Be brave when it's hard. Be good when the world's not. And never forget, we walk on the ground they fought for. This video, it's not about war, it's about heart. It's about remembering the guys who stood their ground so we could stand here today. So yeah, hit that like if you felt something. Share their names. Tell someone about them, because the moment we stop telling their stories, they fade away. But not tonight. Not here. Not while you remember them.